Hey there, mystery lovers. Are you ready to delve deep into the darkest depths of true crime? Well, you're in luck because today we're embarking on a journey that will keep you on the edge of your seat. But before we dive into the chilling tale of Sandra Cantu's murder, I've got a little favor to ask. If you're as passionate about uncovering these riveting stories as we are, hit that subscribe button below. By joining our community, you'll be the first to know when we release new videos packed with spine-tingling mysteries. Don't forget to show us some love by smashing that like button. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring these stories to light. Thanks for tuning in, stay tuned, and let's uncover the truth together. Today's case encompasses various types of crimes. Sandra Renee Cantu was born on March 8, 2001, and was the youngest among her siblings. Her parents, Daniel and Maria, separated when she was young, and she lived her entire life with her mother and grandmother in a mobile home in the Tracy area. They were a large family with 4 children, grandparents, and her mother, and they lived happily within their small home, loved by their neighbors as well. Sandra was a cheerful and active child who loved to try new things, play with her friends, help her grandfather in the garden, and enjoy singing and dancing. She was a child who loved life. On Friday, March 27, 2009, Sandra returned from school and decided to play with her friends in the neighborhood. Maria, Sandra's mother, didn't mind her going out to play because the neighbors and friends all knew Sandra and her mother trusted them. Sandra played within the bounds of the mobile home park, and around 7 p.m., Maria finished preparing dinner. Sandra was supposed to have returned home by then, but she hadn't. Maria called all the neighbors to inquire about her daughter, but no one had seen her. Some told Maria they hadn't seen Sandra for about 2 hours. Sandra had returned from school around 4 p.m. and had gone out to play, as witnessed by most of the neighbors. But now, at 7 p.m., no one knew where she was. Maria wondered because Sandra was always inside the house by around 6:30 to 7 p.m. Maria searched for her daughter for about half an hour, but found no trace of Sandra. Her worry escalated, and after confirming Sandra's disappearance, she decided to return home and contact the police. The police arrived, and they began to investigate Sandra's family to determine what she was wearing before her disappearance. Some police officers asked the neighbors about the last time they saw Sandra and where they saw her. After gathering statements from Sandra's family, the police learned that her grandfather had previously installed a camera to monitor the house. They watched the footage from the camera, which showed Sandra returning home around 4 p.m. and then going out to play with her friends. The footage also showed Sandra in good spirits, happy, and ready to play. The police continued to investigate Maria and her family to identify potential suspects. They discovered that Maria and Daniel were separated, and custody favored Maria, but Daniel wasn't happy about it, leading to some disagreements between them. Investigators speculated that Sandra might be with her father, Daniel, and that he had taken her without informing Maria. However, Maria dismissed this, arguing that Daniel hadn't shown interest in them for years and didn't care about them. Despite this, the investigators monitored Daniel and questioned him, only to find out he had no involvement in Sandra's disappearance and appeared indifferent to her whereabouts. The investigation returned to square one. 24 hours had passed since Sandra's disappearance, and for the police, the chances of finding missing children decreased over time. Within 3 hours, the chances of finding them alive were around 70%, decreasing to 50% after 12 hours, and dropping to just 10% after 24 hours. However, the police were prepared to do anything to find Sandra alive. They contacted the FBI, brought in police dogs, and deployed search teams using various methods, including aerial searches and canine units. Sandra's family also distributed flyers with her picture and information, and hundreds of volunteers joined the search effort, not only in Tracy, but across California. The news of Sandra's disappearance garnered significant sympathy from the state's residents, prompting them to offer a $22,000 reward for information leading to her whereabouts. The reward increased shortly after its announcement to $30,000, and the media extensively covered the story. Something that went unnoticed by everyone was the disappearance of a suitcase from the hallway across from Sandra's neighbor's house at 4 p.m. No one knew who took the suitcase or if it was stolen. It seemed that no one cared about the suitcase amid the ongoing events, assuming it wasn't significant enough to warrant police notification. A suspect emerged based on neighbors' accounts, an ice cream vendor seen in Sandra's neighborhood. The neighbors found the ice cream vendor suspicious because they hadn't seen him before. He interacted with children strangely. However, the police determined he wasn't involved in the case. The investigation then turned to an elderly man living in the same neighborhood. Sandra's family had informed the police that he had previously attempted to approach Sandra by combing her hair and kissing her on the lips. The police considered this a significant event in the case and interrogated the man, who confessed to being attracted to children, especially girls. The police ruled out the man's involvement due to his absence during Sandra's disappearance but continued to monitor him from a distance. Meanwhile, a janitor called the police, reporting that he had found a pink shirt resembling the one Sandra wore. This call raised suspicions about Sandra's fate. The police inspected the shirt and contacted Sandra's mother. Upon learning the news, Maria collapsed and, along with her family, went to the police station. Emotions fluctuated between joy and despair when they confirmed that the shirt wasn't Sandra's. The case returned to square one. Investigators reviewed the home camera footage again, showing Sandra heading straight home, but suddenly changing her path and walking down the street. The police began to speculate about why Sandra changed her direction. Perhaps someone called out to her, or she remembered something about one of her friends and decided to go to them. As mentioned earlier, the chances of finding Sandra alive decreased over time, and most people began to lose hope of finding her alive. Sandra's family held a candlelight vigil to encourage people to continue searching. Many people attended, offering support and condolences to Maria and her family. Several police officers and FBI agents also attended to support Sandra's family, as the situation was tragic, and everyone expressed sympathy and solidarity, especially concerning children. According to the investigators, the likelihood of one of the culprits being present in such gatherings and crowds is high. Who knows, they might be among them to gather updates on the case and monitor changes remotely. Statistics show that criminals or serial killers tend to be present at the crime scene to gauge the real impact within the community. As police officers arrived, people started singing and lighting candles. But all of this abruptly stopped when a young woman emerged from the crowd screaming and crying, claiming she had found something important that could help in the case. Leading the investigators to the mailboxes, she pulled out a letter. Its contents stated that Sandra was trapped in a suitcase submerged in water. The investigators considered this letter as a crucial piece of evidence that could lead them to Sandra's location. Specialists in handwriting noticed spelling errors despite the letter containing only 7 or 8 words. Their report revealed that the letter's writer deliberately changed their handwriting and intentionally made spelling mistakes. However, the letter's content was terrifying for the police, as it became evident they were now searching for Sandra's body. On the second day since the letter's appearance, a specialized police team headed to the location indicated in the letter, approximately 2 miles away from Sandra's residence. Police faced difficulty in searching the sewage water as visibility was poor. The police tracked the letter back to Melissa Huckabee, a neighbor of Sandra. Melissa's daughter and Sandra were very close friends. Melissa worked at the local church Sunday school, where her father was a pastor. Melissa expressed her concern to the investigators regarding the mentioned suitcase, as her suitcase had previously disappeared without a trace, as mentioned earlier. However, there was something peculiar about Melissa's suitcase, as it was large enough to contain Sandra's entire body. All of this raised suspicion among the investigators about Melissa's involvement. They began questioning Melissa about her relationship with Sandra and tried to ascertain her whereabouts during Sandra's disappearance. Melissa claimed she was working at the school located at the church. When asked to provide evidence, Melissa informed them she had called a resident of the neighborhood using the school phone to report her suitcase theft. Upon verification, the police found that Melissa did indeed make the call at around 4 p.m., which was the time Sandra had returned home. However, this did not absolve Melissa of suspicion, as Sandra's disappearance occurred after 4 o'clock or 4:30 p.m. The police continued monitoring Melissa and requested to search her car. Melissa did not object. Upon searching her car, the police found a piece of paper with unclear words. The police sent the paper to specialists who had no difficulty deciphering its content. The paper contained 3 words, and what was strange was that the same words were present in the letter previously found by Melissa. This heightened the investigators' suspicion of Melissa, leading them to search her house. They found a notebook showing the same dimensions as the paper on which the letter was written. Additionally, traces of the written letter were still visible on a sheet of paper from Melissa's notebook. However, despite all this evidence, the police did not arrest Melissa. They presumed she had written the letter to draw attention and gain sympathy. What led the investigators to assume this was Melissa's behavior during the candlelight vigil? She was screaming, pushing people, and crying intensely. Moreover, Melissa had a significant history of mental illness, and everyone who knew her testified that she enjoyed dramatic behavior and sought people's sympathy. The police continued their investigation with Melissa, who stated that she suspected 2 individuals who could be involved in the case. The first was the ice cream vendor, and the second was an unknown man who drugged children. She did not provide details about him. She also mentioned another man and his son, saying that they were drawn to children and that their phones were filled with inappropriate photos of children, possibly including Sandra's. The police seized the phones of the suspects and indeed found unethical photos of children, unfortunately including indecent photos of Sandra taken from different angles, which the innocent child Sandra knew nothing about. The investigators subjected the suspects to lie detector tests. The ice cream vendor passed the test, but the elderly man who drugged children failed the test, though he had a strong alibi. The other man and his son also failed the test. However, it should be noted that lie detector tests are not 100% accurate and are not admissible in court. The investigators suspected that all the suspects were involved, and there was a high possibility that Melissa was also involved with them. On April 6, 2009, the investigators received a phone call from a worker at a local pond saying that he found a large suitcase thrown in the pond. The police immediately went to the location and found a black suitcase tied with a white string. Upon examination by forensic doctors, it was found to be heavy and emitting a foul odor like that of decomposing flesh. Upon opening the suitcase, they found Sandra's lifeless body in a fetal position. Her features were not clear due to decomposition, but they identified her through her clothes. After the autopsy, it was revealed that Sandra had been under the influence of alprazolam and had been assaulted by a foreign object. What puzzled the investigators was how the killer had dressed Sandra again in her own clothes after assaulting and killing her. Normally, criminals would burn or hide the victim's clothes to erase any evidence. The psychiatrist confirmed that the perpetrator was either close to Sandra and knew her well, or felt remorse after committing the crime. This increased the investigators' suspicion that Melissa was the perpetrator. They went to her house to arrest her, but unfortunately found her in the hospital receiving treatment after attempting suicide by swallowing sharp razor blades. Melissa had a long history of mental illness, but why did she attempt suicide after the police found Sandra's body? Melissa was admitted to the hospital, and the police were not allowed to question her due to her mental and physical condition. The investigators searched for more evidence to assist them further. They tried to find more witnesses. A man reported that when he was driving with his girlfriend to a restaurant on the evening of Sandra's disappearance, they noticed a car by the roadside with the driver's door open, but no one was inside. They parked their car to investigate and were surprised to see a girl coming from the direction of the pond. They asked her if everything was all right, and she replied that she had gone to the bathroom. The 2 witnesses described the car they found, which turned out to be Melissa's. They also questioned Melissa's neighbors, who described her as aggressive. She had previously once intentionally set her house on fire. She had also taken one of the neighbors' children without informing them and returned him to the family after a long time. But the child was not okay, so his parents took him to the hospital, where it was discovered that he was under the influence of alprazolam, the same drug Melissa used for her mental health treatment. The investigators searched the church and found another clue. The string used to tie the suitcase was the same as the string on the church's window curtain. They also found some red stains believed to be Sandra's blood. While awaiting the forensic report on this evidence, the investigators tapped into Melissa's phone calls. When Melissa was discharged from the hospital, she called Maria and asked her to send her other daughter, Sandra's sister, to play with her daughter. The investigators were horrified after hearing the phone call, as it was clear that Melissa was trying to lure Sandra's sister as well, and who knows, she might try to harm her too. The officers immediately went to Melissa's house, but luckily found the two girls playing in the backyard. They persuaded Melissa to accompany them under the pretext of investigating the letter they found. Upon arrival at the police station, the investigators confronted her with all the evidence they had discovered, but Melissa denied all the charges, as expected. However, when faced with the witness who saw her near the pond on the evening of Sandra's disappearance, Melissa broke down and began to cry. She confessed and swore that it was just an accident and that she did not intend to kill her. She said Sandra was playing hide and seek with her daughter, and Sandra hid in the suitcase and closed it herself. Meanwhile, Melissa had gone to the church and took the suitcase without noticing that it was unusually heavy. When she finished her work, she returned to her car and found the suitcase, and then remembered that Sandra was inside. She opened the suitcase to find Sandra dead. She said she was shocked and afraid of being punished for a crime she did not commit, so she decided to take the suitcase and throw it in the pond. Of course, the investigators didn't believe Melissa's story, as all the previous evidence contradicted her account. How could Sandra fit herself inside the suitcase, and the forensic report indicated that she had been assaulted before her death? Even the red stains found in the church were identified as Sandra's blood. An arrest was made, and Melissa Huckabee was officially announced, but the police officers were not satisfied with this amount of evidence and continued the search. They found Melissa's computer and examined it to confirm that Melissa had killed the child Sandra with premeditation. It became clear to the investigators that Melissa was looking for a way to kill a child. She found a way for an elderly man who had been killed his granddaughter in the same way. Melissa applied the same method as she lured Sandra after the child was returning to her home, as the surveillance camera shows. She told Sandra to accompany her to the church to decorate the school classrooms. Sandra agreed because of her innocence. Sandra went with Melissa to the church, and immediately, when they arrived, Melissa gave her a drink that knocked Sandra unconscious. Then, Melissa tortured her and killed her. This happened at 5:30 p.m., and by 6 p.m., Melissa put Sandra's lifeless body in the suitcase and then went to the pool of water to throw her there. The positive thing is that Sandra did not. She was not conscious while she was being tortured and killed. What is sad is that Sandra's mother, Maria, didn't know of her daughter's disappearance until 7 p.m., meaning an hour and a half or two after her kidnapping. Melissa Huckabee, 28, was convicted of first-degree kidnapping and murder, but avoided the death penalty by confessing to the crime in full detail and cooperating with the authorities. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and every time she was asked why she committed this crime, she said she didn't know why she did it. Some said it was because of her mental illness. The lesson learned from this crime is that you should teach your children not to go anywhere with anyone, even relatives, without your permission. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Sandra Cantu's tragic story. Now, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Melissa Huckabee's involvement in this case? Do you believe justice was served? Let us know your opinions in the comments below. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more intriguing true crime stories. Thank you, and until next time, stay curious and stay safe.